So what I want to do is today is kind of update you on 4 or 5 of the top items that are, I'm going to call it misconception or reading too much into the law. But I just want to give you a sense of what the IRS is looking at. I'm going to be taking excerpts or reviews of live businesses that have received the refund and now they're trying to decide whether they need to pay it back or not. The first thing I see is no documentation, and mainly in the area of the mandate. So where's our situation here? The fraud is not, for the most part, in the gross receipts test. Everybody was doing that timely. There's the startup business. We're not talking about that. We're talking about what I call door number 2, a mandated government shutdown. So what I see there is typically, yeah, I was COVID impacted. It was related to COVID. I had supply chain, etc. I seen a video that I actually got CPE for over the weekend that I disagree with, but there was 8 ways now to qualify for this credit. No, there's actually 3 ways. There's what I normally talk about here, gross receipts, government mandated shutdown, partial or fully, and startup businesses. But again, they come up with all these other ways. So let's look at the first issue. No documentation of the shutdown. In all these, once in a while, I'll see a mention mandate. But what I don't see is the actual government mandate. So there, what do we mean by a mandated government shutdown? I want to go to, this is an article out of Tax Advisor, a magazine that AICPA, the American Institute of CPAs, put out. And I just want, it says here, notice 2021-20 indicates that an issuing state or local government must have jurisdiction over the employer's operations. Now, it's critical, note that each instance, compliance is mandatory. Conversely, government actions that does not qualify would include government officials merely including the diligence of maintaining social distance, avoiding unnecessary travel or guidance by the CDC. Those are all, they're not mandated, they're not required. And the other thing I look at, and I'm going to get the word mandate. What does it mean? And then what do I document? That's the big misconception here. Well, I did a different video off of one of the companies that did a continuing education piece, and they had the map of the United States. In that map of the United States, I went and clicked on Missouri, and it said on the front of it, government shutdown. This may not be all the government shutdowns. So I went out to the state of Missouri. And I went out and got all the orders that were cited in that map of shutdowns. Here's the governor's orders. When I go through them, nowhere, not one of these require any full or partial shutdown of a business. The first executive order, it deals with COVID, but Governor Michael Parson delegates members of his staff to have advisory authority over departments. That has nothing to do with the mandated shutdown, but it was cited. And what my takeaway, this misconception, when I saw that saying government mandates, and I see shutdown, and I pull up off the United States, the map of Missouri, and I click on Missouri shutdown, guess what? It populates these orders on a spreadsheet, and it's got all the dates to the left. So I first think, wow, we got orders all the way from March to the following April, over a year. But again, when I went to the actual governor's website, these orders were not government mandated shutdowns. They were recommendations, they were guidance for government employees. Let's keep the militia available, let's have social distancing. All that stuff was here, but not one of these was actually a mandate for me in the state of Missouri. Misnomer, make sure a government mandated shutdown, you have looked it up. It applies, as we found from this article, it applies to your operations at your location. I did a video on look up your zip code, look up the state where you're at. And so that's the first one, is they just say we got a mandated, or they'll just say there's a government shutdown, related to a government shutdown. But they never say starting on this date and stop on that date. So that's the first mistake. The second one is to make sure the order is actually a mandatory order that covers your operations. Now, when I look, and this is going to be another one of those, let's make this the document. So we got one. what's the definition? I see wrong definitions. 2, I see them trying to make it a mandate when it's not a mandate. 3, you got to make sure it's a required mandate. And then what you have to do is with that is then make sure your quarters, I see people with 5 and 6 quarters and they mention mandate. But remember, you qualify under mandate you qualify for the quarter, but wages only qualifies from the date the mandate is started to the mandate stops. I don't see anywhere in any of these, for the most part, where they even calculate that. They just, well, you send them the quarters and they send it back. So there's another indicator. If you've got all these quarters, the person that was advising you and assisting you in this, did they actually go through each quarter with you and say, what was the mandated period? I can already tell you, remember, I did shopping on over 20 different companies. Not one time did I have to do it by quarter by quarter. I've even got some of them recorded where I make the remark, well, I assume this covers all the quarters. Well, yeah, it sounds reasonable. Sounds reasonable, it's not mandated. So we've covered the mandated government shutdown. You've got to record it, make sure it applies to your operations. And then what we have to do is, did they figure out the qualified wages? So 1, is it in order? 2, when did it start and stop? Because that's our qualified wages. I've reviewed payroll and stuff, and almost never do I see them trying to figure out when the period stopped and period stopped, or started and stopped. I never seen those calculations. And I'm actually having the people I'm reviewing request from the third party that did this all of their file. So I'm looking, some cases I'm only looking what the clients said they sent. In other cases, we're requesting all the documentation. And in doing so, I'm still finding very consistently, there is no, for the most part, there is no real calculation of the qualified wages, even if you did qualify under a mandate from the date it started to the date it stopped. So that's the second one. So it's actually about the third one. So I've covered enough on the mandated. Let's go to the next big one, the big, I think, misnomer, supply chain. I did a video, I think it's a legal memo AM 2023-005. If you go to the IRS.gov and go to the ERC checklist and you start to click on it, you'll come down to supply chain and they'll link you right to where you need to go for that. But after seeing the word supply chain and this 1-hour continuing education I got over the weekend, they made the remark, and I don't agree with this. I do not agree with this. But they made a remark that you have gross receipts. The second one is supply chain. And then the 3 through 8 was different types of government mandated shutdowns or reasons for it. My point is there is no what I call door to the treasury for a supply chain. A supply chain means that my operations was not shut down. So I didn't, under our first step, there was no government mandate where I'm at for the period I'm trying to claim the credit. But these third parties are saying, well, supply chain. What supply chain? You know, on my videos on supply chain, I did that chief counsel memorandum. Makes it almost impossible. Here's an article I used almost 3 years ago on supply chain. And it's almost impossible because if my operations are not shut down and I say supply chain, that supplier has to be more than nominal to me. But I got to prove that supplier was shut down. So what do I need? All of their mandate requirements as if it were in my operations. And I got to prove their operations was suspended or shut down, which impacted my operations.